Welcome back, Night Wanderer. Tonight, you're slipping quietly into a chapter of history they definitely forgot to teach in school. By the way, if you were actually there, you'd probably have been arrested, eaten badly preserved fish, or caught something unpleasant. But don't worry. Tonight, you're only here in spirit. Before we set off, do that slow scroll to like and subscribe, but only if these sleepy little time loops are your thing. And tell me where in the world you're watching from, and what time your clock says. It's strangely comforting knowing who else is still up. Now lights low, maybe grab a blanket or let your ceiling fan hum away in the background. Time to drift gently back, one step at a time. And there it is, that noise. It's not the crash of waves or the call of gulls or even the wind caressing a sail like some romantic maritime painting. No, it's the groaning, grinding creak of ancient, wet timber shifting under your body weight as you open your eyes into the gloom. Your bed is not a bed. It's a plank. It's a coffin with commitment issues. You're on the lowest deck of a Spanish galleon, or as the crew so poetically call it, the hell deck. It's dark. Not midnight in the forest dark, it's soup dark, lightless stew. There's one beam of sunlight leaking through the slats above, and it lands squarely on a man nearby, who's sleeping with his mouth open, snoring through a beard that seems to have developed sentience and its own colonial ambitions. Your nostrils fill instantly with a cocktail of, well, let's call it marine funk. It's rotting rope, moldy salt pork, and the breath of 50 other men who've all had the same dinner and no toothbrushes. There's also that special note of human foot, not just one foot, but a symphony of unwashed ankles and soggy wool socks. You're already gagging and you haven't even moved. You try to sit up. Mistake. Your spine makes a noise like breaking bread, stale bread, and every muscle aches like you spent the night wrestling barrels. Which, you vaguely remember, might not be far from the truth. Someone definitely rolled over you around midnight. You're sleeping elbow to armpit with at least 4 other men. One of them may be a corpse, but no one has the energy to check yet. He's still warm. Good enough. The ceiling is low. If you sit up too fast, you'll meet it. With your skull. You learned that on day 2. You're on day, you've lost count. That happens when you stop seeing land. Time dissolves. There's only rope, salt, and whatever flavor of purgatory the cook is boiling. You hear water, not gentle, not romantic. It slaps the side of the hull like it's trying to climb aboard and finish what dysentery started. The ship groans again. It always groans, like it resents being awake, just like you. Outside a bell rings. A deep clang that shivers through the beams and bones and echoes like a church bell being hit by a hungover ghost. It's time. Time to stop pretending you're asleep. You swing your legs over the edge, boots scraping damp wood. You don't have shoes. You have foot prisons. Stitched leather bags that have molded themselves to your feet in the same way grief molds itself to the heart. You have not taken them off in several days. You are terrified of what will be inside them when you do. There is, squish. You ignore it. The man next to you stirs, coughs, scratches himself in 3 different places, and then mutters something about rats stealing his spoon again. You don't comment. The rats on this ship do steal spoons. They also steal bread, rope, and small dreams. You once saw one wearing a button like a crown. Above you, the thundering footfalls of the officer class. You know because they wear shoes that cost more than your entire rations for a month and walk like they invented God. One of them shouts. The words are Spanish, and they are mostly curses. Everyone understands them regardless of nationality. Pain is a universal language on this ship. The smell deepens as more men wake. There's a wet cough from somewhere deeper in the deck, the kind of cough that tells a story. That story is, I'm dying, but will keep working until I die, standing up and fall into a barrel of pitch. Someone groans, someone else begins to hum a sea shanty, and someone, you pray it's a rat, lets out a fart that might be registered as a minor weather event. You reach for your water flask. It is, in theory, water. In practice, it is brine that tastes faintly of iron and deeply of pipe. You sip anyway. Dehydration is a far less dignified way to perish. As you start crawling, yes, crawling, toward the ladder that leads upward to the slightly less terrible deck, you take inventory of your body. One toe may be missing. Your hip is bruised. You are itchy in a place that might be spiritual in nature. Your left shoulder pops like a bone maraca. This is normal. This is your morning now. You haul yourself up, rung by rung, splinters in your palms, eyes adjusting to the sickly gray-blue of filtered sunlight cutting through sails, ropes, and the occasional rogue seagull dropping. Above deck is chaos and order locked in passionate, codependent battle. Sailors haul rope, buckets swing, someone screams at someone else to watch the damn yardarm, a command as incomprehensible as it is urgent. The deck tilts slightly. The sky above is endless and somehow still judging you. You made it. You're upright. You didn't die in the night. You haven't yet hurled yourself into the sea or been devoured by rats. Congratulations, you're a sailor now. And the day has just begun. The air up here is better, but only in the way that being punched in the face is preferable to being kicked in the stomach. It's fresher, sure. If by fresh, you mean a crisp breeze lightly salted with tar, dead fish, and whatever questionable fluid the gulls drop as they soar triumphantly overhead, free from the obligations of rank, duty, or undercooked beans. Your first thought is, I need to void something. Your bladder, your bowels, or perhaps your soul. Whatever it is, your body is gently insisting that it no longer wants to be a container. Unfortunately, this ship was not built with privacy in mind, or plumbing, or dignity. Instead, you make your way, stiffly haltingly, to the ship's head. No, not the captain. The toilet. It's a plank. A plank. At the front of the ship, exposed to the wind and sky and sea, a hole has been carved in it. Sometimes two. Occasionally there's rope, if you're lucky. You perch precariously over this blessed architectural afterthought and pray to all available saints that the next wave won't baptize your entire lower half in the Atlantic. You relieve yourself into the endless blue, pondering how something so vast can be both majestic and deeply judgmental. When you're finished, you shuffle back across the deck, holding your trousers, such as they are, and avoiding eye contact with anyone who may have heard the sounds your body just made. A nearby seaman scratches his scalp so vigorously it counts as violence. Another is vomiting into a barrel. Could be seasickness. Could be last night's fish. Could be existential despair. Who can say? You return below deck to retrieve your few possessions. Possessions is generous. You have a sack. In that sack, one spoon, borrowed, possibly cursed, one mostly intact comb, useless, and a handful of personal items that once held sentimental value but now mostly serve as evidence you were a land dweller once. A small wooden carving of your mother, worn smooth from clutching. A letter you can no longer read in the dark. A sock. Not a pair. Just the one. Getting dressed is more of an act of acceptance than intention. You do not dress to impress. You dress to survive exposure and minimize chafing. Your shirt is made of rough linen that feels like punishment. Your trousers are wool, a material that has decided to hold water like a grudge. Your outer layer smells faintly of mildew and definitively of someone else's body odor. You put it on anyway. Your fingers, half numb and pinched from rope work, fumble with ties and buttons, and your boots protest with every shove. Somewhere in your clothing, something moves. You choose not to investigate. Lice are a fact of life now. You're a mobile colony. You get used to it. Once partially armored in damp cloth, you make your way to your first duty of the day, scraping salt. Not glamorous, not heroic, but very necessary. Or so you've been told by men whose idea of truth has been eroded by wind, rum, and religion. Salt gathers on everything. The ropes, the rails, the barrels, your skin. It crusts, clings, and eats through wood like bitterness through hope. So you scrape with a dull blade. 1 square foot at a time. For hours. Your back aches, your knuckles bleed, and the whole time you hum. Not because you're happy, but because it keeps the other sounds out. Occasionally someone screams. Sometimes it's rage. Sometimes it's a splinter, sometimes it's madness. The line is thin. One sailor, a man named Gaspar, who once said he killed a man with a spoon over a sausage, insists he hears mermaids. No one corrects him. Frankly, if anyone on this ship deserves a fantasy, it's Gaspar. As the sun rises, it stabs through the cloud line like a blade through butter, though more accusatory. It's hot now. Too hot. And suddenly you remember why you hate your wool shirt. You itch. You sweat, you bake, there is no shade, there is only duty. Midway through the morning, you're summoned, not with words but with a grunt and a gesture to help haul a barrel. It is heavy. You do not ask what's inside. Asking questions is a land habit. On the Galleon, curiosity is like a cracked beam. Sooner or later, it'll sink you. The barrel leaks. You smell pickled fish, or pickled something. You walk faster. Then comes the inspection. Not of the ship, of you. One of the officers appears, resplendent in his slightly less disgusting clothes and slightly more functional hat, and he looks you up and down like you're a badly drawn map. He asks your name. You answer. He forgets it instantly. Then he asks what you're doing. You tell him. He nods and leaves. You go back to scraping. It was a performance. You reach into your shirt and scratch. You pull out a small bug. It scurries across your hand. You flick it overboard. You do not scream. You are a sailor. You are an ecosystem now. As the bell clangs to mark mid-morning, a sense of communal wariness settles in. Not tiredness, wariness. The kind that lives in the bone and whispers about how long the voyage has left. No one knows, not even the captain. The stars are your only map, and the stars do not care. You take a moment to lean against the railing, eyes half-lidded, staring out at the infinite, judgmental sea. It glares back. You imagine it whispering, "Jump. You'll float, probably." Then the bosun calls for more rope to be hauled. There is always more rope, endless rope, rope that replicates in the night. You haul. Your stomach grumbles. You ignore it. Soon it will be breakfast, or what passes for it. Let's take a little tour of your new home. It's charming in the way a haunted cellar might be charming. If you enjoy the scent of stale despair, rotting wood, and the ever-present suspicion that someone or something has died near your feet. Your bunk, if it can be called that, is a wooden shelf affixed to the hull. There is no mattress. There is no pillow. There is a plank, warped by moisture and dreams long since given up on. If you are lucky, and you are not, you may have a strip of canvas stretched across it to soften the wood. Canvas that, if you're curious, has been used before, by someone else, possibly many someones. They are probably dead now, possibly eaten by the sea, possibly eaten by scurvy, possibly eaten by rats. But let's not dwell. Speaking of rats, they live here too. You might have heard scuttling last night, or this morning, or right now. That's not your imagination. That's not a dream. That's reality. And the rats are thriving. You envy them. They eat better than you. They sleep better than you. They do not have to hoist anything. They are free to gnaw through sacks of flour and live their best vermin lives while you wonder whether the rash on your inner thigh is a fungus, a flea bite, or something with teeth. Let's talk vermin. There are lice. You have lice. Do not argue. Do not hope. Accept it. They are in your hair, in your shirt seams, in your underthings. Should you still have any. They are industrious, loyal companions. They itch, you scratch, you bleed, they stay. It's the longest relationship you've ever had. Then there are the fleas. Fleas come in waves, not unlike the sea, except they're warmer and more personal. If you ever wondered what it's like to be a feast, congratulations, you're it. They bite in clusters, they bite in private places, they bite with enthusiasm, and you cannot see them. But oh, you feel them. Especially at night when you're trying not to roll off your bunk into the abyss below. You might think, surely there's a cleaning schedule? And you'd be right. It's called bucket day. On bucket day, someone, often you, is handed a bucket of seawater and a sad, threadbare rag and told to scrub the floors, and the walls, and the ceilings, and the captain's quarters, if you're especially cursed that week. But seawater isn't soap. It's just more wet. So you scrub, and the salt helps a little, and then dries, and the mildew returns like a bad decision. Some corners of the ship are sacred, not in a holy sense, but in a don't touch unless you want to die sense. These are places where rot lives, places where barrels have leaked, places where something once moved and never stopped moving. Mold clings to these timbers like gossip clings to a parish. You pretend not to see it, you whistle. The ship creaks in judgment. Air circulation is a theory. Below deck, it's a fever dream. There are no windows, there are no vents, there are hatches, occasionally opened, but mostly you exist in a warm, damp lung of humanity and moisture and dreams deferred. Every breath is a shared breath. Every cough is a communion. There is no soap, there is no shower, there is seawater and shame. If you are feeling bold, you may strip and pour a bucket over your head, scrub with sand, and hope no one is watching. Someone is always watching, the cook probably. He has opinions. Your skin begins to change. It cracks, it peels, it hardens. You are not becoming tougher. You are becoming a crustacean. Some sailors carry amulets, charms against disease. A tooth, a bone, a bit of cloth that once belonged to someone lucky. You don't have one. Instead, you carry a small shard of mirror. You use it to check your teeth. They're still there, yellow, wiggling slightly, but still present. The older sailors tell stories about men who rot alive. They speak of the man who lost a toe, then a foot, then a leg, all while still performing his duties. He was promoted. Then he died. The lesson is unclear. Sometimes, to escape the smell, you climb to the deck and breathe deep. The sea smells better. Not good, just better. Salt, brine, fish rot. Distant storms, occasionally something floral, a hallucination surely. You pretend it's lavender. It's probably whale carcass. You wipe your brow. Your shirt sticks to your chest. Something crawls across your stomach. You slap it. It crunches. You do not investigate further. You go about your day. Hygiene, you realize, is not a priority. It is not even an option. It is a memory. You think of a warm bath, a clean towel, a fragrant bar of soap. You begin to cry just a little. Someone hands you a mop. You begin again. Welcome home. You wake up to the smell of boiled hopelessness. It's not a poetic smell. It's not nostalgic. It's not even the kind of smell that inspires tears. It just exists, like mildew or guilt. It seeps into your clothing and sits in your nostrils like a squat, greasy tenant who has no intention of leaving. On a Spanish galleon, breakfast is a generous word. More accurately, it's the first chewing event of the day, and you are the lucky recipient. But first, let's get you to the food. You shuffle to the mess, which is less of a room and more of a slightly wider corridor near the midship, dimly lit by a porthole that has been smudged by countless fingers, grease, and the eternal handprint of one guy named Martin, who doesn't know what soap is. The mess gets its name not from any formal naval tradition, but because it's literally always a mess. Someone has spilled beans, someone has vomited, someone has cried, all in the same square foot. A man ladles something thick into a wooden bowl. He doesn't make eye contact. He never does. His name is Pedro. He used to smile. Now he just stirs. Today, you're having a rare treat, hardtack. Also known as ship's biscuit. Also known as bread's regrettable cousin. It is made of flour, water, and the concept of chewing forever. It is a rectangle of punishment. If you threw it at someone, it could kill. If you dropped it on your toe, you could die. It's also full of weevils, but you don't mind. The weevils add protein, also movement, also a reminder that at least something on the ship is thriving. You pick up the biscuit, tap it twice against the table. Some of the bugs fall out, some burrow in deeper. You nibble the corner, it does not give. You try again, still no. You attempt to soak it in your bowl of what may be stew, but let's not make assumptions. It could also be yesterday's dishwater, thickened by despair. The stew is lukewarm. Not hot, not cold, just the exact temperature at which fat begins to separate from liquid and float lazily to the top like a slick, glistening ghost of better meals. In it, a piece of something that might be potato, a flake of what may have been cabbage before the voyage, 2 beans valiantly hanging on, and meat. Or a meat-shaped substance. It is gray. That's all you know. Gray and chewy and possibly alive in your heart now. You eat anyway. Because on the sea, food doesn't nourish, it tests you. Let's talk about salt pork. Salt pork is what happens when you leave meat alone with salt for too long and tell them to work it out. It's what you get when refrigeration is a dream and protein is a gamble. It comes in barrels, big, wet barrels, floating in a sea of pinkish brine and suspicion. Every morning, someone scoops a few slabs out and slices them like guilt. The pork is always salty. That's the one constant in your life now. It is not spicy. It is not flavored. It is salt forward, salt sideways, salt in your wounds. Chew carefully. Sometimes there are bones, sometimes there are teeth. Sometimes the meat resists, like it remembers being an animal and holds a grudge. On better days, you get cheese. But cheese is doing a lot of work here. It's a hardened wedge of fat and mold, wrapped in cloth that you pretend not to see. It's crumbly, smells like damp shoes. You bite it anyway. Because you are now the kind of person who eats damp shoes for strength. And water? There is water, technically. It is stored in barrels that once held wine, then held vinegar, and now hold whatever memories are left behind. It tastes like sadness, wood, and ghost grapes. Occasionally you get wine or grog. Grog is water and rum, sometimes lime juice if you're lucky, but you're not. It's meant to prevent scurvy, but it mostly just makes the morning a little blurrier. Which is welcome. A foggy morning is better than a clear one on this ship. You sit in silence with your bowl. Everyone chews in slow synchronicity. There is no conversation. There is only the soft gnash of teeth on sinew, the occasional clink of spoon on wood, a cough from someone who definitely has something, a fart from someone who definitely doesn't care anymore. You make eye contact with no one. You focus on your stew. You pretend the gray blob is turkey. It is not. It is never turkey. You swallow. You eat your hardtack in bites the size of betrayal. Each one chips a little enamel. You chew until your jaw clicks. Then you drink the lukewarm water that is only slightly more tolerable than seawater. At the end of the meal, you're not full. You're just not starving anymore. That's the best you can hope for. Someone takes your bowl. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve. Your sleeve was already dirty, so it doesn't matter. You stand up. The floor creaks. The rats scatter. You step around something wet. You don't ask. The sun is rising through the smudged porthole. A shaft of light catches the floating dust in the air. Or maybe that's just flour from yesterday, or mold spores. You inhale deeply and regret it. It's time to start the day. And yes, you'll do this again tomorrow. Let us begin with a simple truth. You are not getting dressed so much as you are adding layers of discomfort to your existing suffering. Fashion is not the goal. Protection is not even guaranteed. The only thing your clothing really offers is tradition. And that tradition is, wear it until it becomes part of your skin. Your first garment is the shirt. It was once off-white. It is now a shade best described as ship beige. It smells like the inside of a footlocker that someone used to store pickled fish. You pull it over your head slowly. The fabric is coarse, wool or linen, depending on what was cheapest when the quartermaster was last sober, and it scratches your skin like 1,000 soft, hateful bristles. The shirt is damp, not because of any recent washing. It's just always damp. The air on the ship hangs with humidity. Everything has a dew point, including you. Next comes your doublet. It sounds fancier than it is. Really, it's a vest-like contraption made of thicker cloth that's been patched more times than a 200-year-old quilt. It doesn't button anymore, but you pretend it does, tying it shut with a piece of frayed rope you found in the bilge. It doesn't help much, but it gives the illusion of structure. Something you desperately crave in this world of wobble and waves. Then, your hose, which is just a medieval way of saying pants that are more leggings than trousers. These are tight, itchy, and sag in all the wrong places. The waistline is cinched with a cord. It used to be your bootlace. Now it's your dignity. You hop on one leg trying to get them on. The ship lurches. You hit your head on a wooden beam. You swear quietly. This is the sailor's ballet. The hose cling to your thighs like regret. You try not to think about what's already living in them. Lice? Definitely. Fleas? Certainly. Something larger and nameless? Possibly. You tie them at the knee. Why? Because everyone else does. It's like a fraternity hazing ritual, but with more rope and fewer beer pong tournaments. Socks? No. You don't get socks. Socks are for landowners and bishops. Your feet are bare, cracked, blistered, perpetually moist from seawater and whatever fluid is currently leaking from the barrels in the hold. You will not look at your toes today. You haven't looked at them in weeks. You suspect they have secrets. Now the shoes. They are leather in theory, but they are more hole than structure. They're more idea than protection. One heel is missing. The left one has a flap that curls upward like a pastry that gave up. You shove your foot in. It squelches. Something shifts inside. You do not scream. That's growth. You tie them with grim determination. The laces snap. You retie them with a sailor's knot, which ironically is also the name of the rash spreading between your thighs. Hat? Optional. You choose not to. The last time you wore it, a seagull stole it. And honestly, the seagull seemed to need it more. You grab your belt. It's thickened leather with a buckle shaped like a sad fish. You tighten it over your doublet, not because it holds anything, but because it makes you feel slightly more human. The belt is the line between man and driftwood. Strapped to it, a knife. Dull. Rusty. A tool for cutting rope, meat, or interpersonal tension. You haven't used it in a week, but it makes you feel powerful. The illusion matters. Let's pause to discuss underwear. You do not have any. You did once. A simple linen cloth, wrapped between your legs and tucked into your hose. But that was weeks ago. It disintegrated in a storm. Now your thighs rub together with every step, creating friction that can only be described as biblical. So, you walk carefully, with dignity, like a man whose inner thighs are one careless gust of wind away from damnation. Finally, you check your appearance in a polished piece of tin nailed to the wall. It reflects a version of you that looks vaguely human. Your hair is matted, flattened to one side. Your face is lined with salt crust and the outline of a rat bite. You smile weakly. The tin does not smile back, but you are dressed. Technically. Let's summarize the aesthetic. Waterlogged beggar meets haunted marionette. If someone from the 21st century saw you, they might assume you just lost a bet at a Renaissance fair, or escaped a particularly avant-garde community theater production of Les Miserables. You step out onto the deck. The wind hits you. It goes straight through your damp shirt, into your soul, and right out the back. You shiver. You are dressed, but you are not warm, or comfortable, or clean, but you are ready. Ready for labor. Ready for salt. Ready for more rope than any one lifetime should require. And if your clothes betray you, if they rip, mold, or fall off, you'll keep wearing them, because replacements cost money. And money is for officers, or liars. You have lice, damp wool, and a belt full of nothing. Congratulations, you're now officially dressed like a sailor on a Spanish galleon. Let us begin with a kind reminder. You are not a passenger on this ship. There are no velvet-lined hammocks or attentive stewards offering lemon water. You are not here to discover new lands or collect pearls. You are here to lift, haul, pull, swab, bleed, and suffer, in that order. And then again, on repeat, forever. You step onto the deck dressed in your finest damp rags and immediately regret existing. The sun has risen, not warmly, but menacingly, like a celestial landlord demanding rent in the form of your skin's moisture. The light bounces off the sea in harsh white sheets, blinding you, blistering you, and ensuring that nothing is dry, including your morale. Let's talk about your boss. He's the boatswain, or bosun, a man who looks like he was carved from old rope and fermented anger. His voice is a mixture of salt and cruelty. He doesn't speak so much as bark. And he loves rope. Too much, really. Rope is his child. You are its unworthy caretaker. The day begins with hauling. Not just any hauling. Rope hauling, sail hauling, barrel hauling. Hauling things up, then down, then back up again because someone forgot to chant correctly. That's right, there are chants, called sea shanties, which sound like sad group therapy for exhausted men who haven't seen fruit in months. The rhythm is essential, not for morale, but so you don't accidentally decapitate someone with a swinging boom. You grab the rope, it bites your palm instantly. It's made of hemp and resentment. It's thick, frayed, and soaked in a rich stew of salt water, blood, and fish oil. As you pull, splinters wedge themselves into your fingers like tiny reminders that nothing in life is smooth. The sail unfurls above you like a giant, passive-aggressive curtain, and for one glorious second you feel wind fill it. It snaps, the ship jerks forward, and everyone cheers quietly inside. Because today, the wind has chosen not to be petty. Then someone drops a bucket. The bosun screams. You wince. Your joy is over. Now it's time to scrub, because the deck must be holy. Not literally, but holy stoning is what they call scrubbing the wooden boards on your knees with blocks of sandstone. It's like exfoliating a cathedral, only the cathedral is trying to kill you. You kneel on the already splintered surface and begin your penance. Your knees burn, your fingers go numb. You feel your soul leave your body briefly to ask what the point of this is. Here's a secret. The deck isn't actually dirty. It's been scrubbed daily. But someone said it looked weathered, and now you must make wood sparkle like it's going to prom. Every few minutes, someone vomits. Sometimes it's the motion of the sea. Sometimes it's the smell of bilge water wafting from below, that heady blend of human waste, dead rats, and leaked pickle brine. Sometimes it's just the existential realization that this is your life now. You do not judge. You simply wipe it up with a rag and move on. Next up, rat duty. Rats are everywhere, behind barrels, inside hammocks, occasionally steering the ship if rumors are true. They are not afraid of you. You are a soft, clumsy giant who smells like regret. They run across your feet, steal your crumbs, and occasionally nest in your shoes. Your job is to set traps, which are really just planks propped up with spoons and wishes, or bash them with a stick. You're not good at it. They laugh at you, literally. It sounds like squeaking, but you know, Sometimes you catch one. You stare into its eyes. It stares into yours. You consider keeping it as a friend. Then it bites you. You scream. The rat escapes. You bleed. The bosun laughs. Circle of life. Midday now, time for lifting barrels. Not small barrels. Casks of water, salted pork, and weevils. Yes, there are entire barrels of flour infested with bugs. They add texture. The barrels are stacked in a pyramid of doom below deck. Your job is to bring one up without falling, breaking your leg, or dying from the smell. The hold is dark, wet, and loud with creaking wood. Every noise down here sounds like the beginning of a shipwreck. You crouch, grab the barrel, and heave it upward. Something in your back pops. It's probably fine. You crawl back toward the ladder, muttering prayers to saints you've made up. Saint Hernia, Saint Blister. Saint Don't Let Me Die Holding Pork. Once you surface, someone hands you a mop. It is not your turn to mop. But it is now. There are seagull droppings, rainwater puddles, and the unmistakable puddle of mysterious leakage from a barrel labeled only medicinal tar. You pretend not to think about it. You just mop in long, meditative strokes, humming a tune that might be Greensleeves or might be Sobbing in Quarter Time. Sometimes you pass the gunners. They're loading cannons or pretending to. Mostly they just argue about fuses and chew tobacco with the intensity of men who know they'll explode someday. You envy them. Their job is dangerous but dramatic. Yours is just wet. Your last task of the day is climbing. Someone needs to go up to the crow's nest. It's your turn. You pretend not to hear. The bosun points. You sigh. The rigging is a web of death. Ropes, pulleys, sails, and splinters, all swaying 60 feet above a deck made of bone-shattering planks. You begin your ascent like a damp spider. Halfway up, the wind picks up. The ship rolls. You consider your will. You don't have one, but if you did, it would be one sentence. Tell the rat I loved him. You reach the top. You see everything. Endless sea, a horizon smeared with clouds, another ship in the distance, possibly real, possibly a hallucination. You wave. No one waves back. Eventually someone rings the bell. Work is done, or at least paused. The sun sets. Your arms ache, your fingers are raw, your nose is full of salt, your soul full of despair, your shirt full of water that no longer evaporates. You've survived another day of sailor labor. You are stronger, but you are also less human. Still, at least you're not below deck yet. That's after dinner. Let's begin with this gentle disclaimer. If you're already feeling unwell on this Spanish galleon, you may want to start saying goodbye to people you like. Because what passes for medicine here is mostly guesswork, bleeding, and the unshakable confidence of men who believe in demons. There is no doctor aboard, not in the way you're thinking. There's the surgeon, yes, but calling him that is an act of wild optimism. He is more accurately a butcher with a few books, most of which are damp, outdated, and illustrated with drawings of phlegm. If you get injured, this man will approach you with the look of someone mentally rehearsing a pie recipe, except the pie is your leg. Let's say your symptoms start subtly. A headache, fatigue, a little dizziness. You might hope it's just seasickness, but no, friend, it's scurvy. And your gums are already plotting their exit. Scurvy, for those lucky enough to be born post-citrus, is what happens when your body runs out of vitamin C. Your joints swell, your teeth loosen, like they're preparing to parachute out of your mouth. Your skin gets rough, bruises form spontaneously, and old wounds mysteriously reopen, just to say hello again. The cure? Limes. But alas, we have none. Only salt pork, dried beans, and the kind of hardtack that fights back when you bite it. The surgeon's solution to your symptoms? Bloodletting. Naturally. He pulls out his kit, a lovingly preserved roll of leather filled with horrifying tools. Rusty blades, curved hooks, flame lancets, and a jar of leeches he refers to as the girls. He selects a blade and mutters something about imbalanced humors. You, the patient, don't know what that means, but you're pretty sure you're about to lose more than just your humor. He cuts you, gently, then not gently, and drains the bad blood into a bowl. He looks pleased with himself. You are now both wounded and dizzy, but congratulations, your humors are now balanced. Tragically, so is your proximity to death. And if you were injured instead, say you dropped a cannonball on your foot or your hand was caught in a rope and twisted into a sad meat pretzel. Well, now we're talking about amputation. The surgeon will inform you in calm tones that the limb has turned. That's a poetic way of saying it smells like despair and is turning purple. There is no anesthesia, of course, only rum and screaming. You're given a bottle, told to drink, told to keep drinking. Then a sailor named Pedro sits on your chest while another clamps your arms and the surgeon begins to saw. Not delicately, not with finesse, with the speed of a man trying to carve a roast during a fire. It is loud, it is hot, and the smell, oh the smell, is a mix of blood, sweat, and burning, because cauterization comes next. A glowing hot iron rod pressed into the stump to stop the bleeding. The sound you make is not human, but neither is the day you're having. If you survive, congratulations. You'll spend the next few weeks lying in a hammock that swings directly over barrels of spoiled fish, being occasionally checked on by someone who knows nothing and cares less. The wound may heal, or it may become infected and begin to fester. Now, let's talk about fevers. The kind that come out of nowhere. You're fine one moment, then shivering violently, sweating through your only shirt and muttering about sea monsters. It could be anything. Malaria, typhus, or that thing from the rat that bit you last month. The treatment? More bloodletting. Possibly a mustard plaster, which is essentially spicy paste smeared onto your chest until your skin blisters. Or you may be given mercury, which will either kill the fever or your kidneys. Either way, your problem ends. There are also poultices, herbal mixes smeared onto wounds, but herbs are hard to come by on a boat where greenery is considered suspicious. So instead, you might get a bread poultice, because what better way to treat rot than with moldy flour and despair? To distract you, someone might suggest cupping. This is where heated glass cups are applied to your back to create suction. It leaves large, angry welts and accomplishes absolutely nothing, but it looks like someone is trying. And if you complain too much, if you cry out in agony, you're labeled a malingerer, a coward, a liability. Because everyone is in pain, everyone is sick, your suffering must be efficient and quiet. Let's pause for a moment to talk about dental care. There is none. Teeth fall out, they rot in your gums, they ache with cold wind, with moldy bread, with sadness. If one becomes unbearable, it is yanked, not gently, not skillfully, but with pliers and prayer. The pain is so great that some men faint, some bite their own tongue, and some never speak again. There are no clean bandages. Wounds are covered with rags that once dried cannonballs or someone's laundry. Infection is not an if, but a when. When it turns black, when it smells sweet, when it starts talking. Now let's not forget mental illness. You may be cracking under the stress, the noise, the isolation, the endless ocean, the rats whispering your name. There is no support, only mockery. If you hallucinate, you are touched. If you cry, you are weak. If you walk into the sea, they may just let you. And still, you keep going. Because no one is allowed to rest for too long. And because sometimes someone recovers. The fever breaks, the wound scabs over. A man stumbles back onto the deck, pale but alive. He is a miracle. He is also your replacement, now that you're too weak to swab. At the end of the day, the surgeon retires to his corner. He sharpens his blades, he hums, he feeds his leeches, he dreams of land where there are beds and real doctors and people who don't bleed on him hourly. But you fall asleep on salted wood with a bandage that smells like vinegar and foot. Tomorrow, your other leg might hurt. But that's tomorrow's problem. Welcome to the evening meal, or what passes for it aboard this floating fever dream of splinters, salt, and very questionable choices. You've just scrubbed the deck with your own regret and maybe lost a toe to rope burn, but don't worry, it's dinner time. Time to gather around and chew something. Not enjoy, not taste, just chew. Tonight's menu features a familiar cast of characters. First up, hardtack, the hard, baked, flour and water biscuit that's been aging gracefully since you left port 3 months ago. You bang it against the table. It doesn't break. You try to bite it. Your teeth consider mutiny. Eventually, you soak it in brine, rum, or your own tears until it softens enough to gnaw. But beware, inside the hardtack, a lovely little bonus. Weevils. Tiny beetles, dead if you're lucky, alive if you're not. They add a delightful crunch like the world's most depressing cereal. Of course, you could pick them out, flick them aside, sift the flour, but most sailors don't bother. Why? Because the protein helps. And frankly, after a week of salted pork and slop, the weevils are starting to taste like character development. Speaking of salted pork, here it is again, bloated and gray and still somehow the best thing on the ship. It's been soaking in barrels of brine since the last continent. The brine is thick and warm and smells like ocean rot, but the meat inside is technically edible, if you redefine edible to mean won't kill you instantly. You hold a piece in your hand. It's greasy. It trembles when you jiggle it. You chew and chew and chew, and at no point does it become softer. It simply exists, a challenge in meat form, a pork-flavored puzzle. Sometimes there's dried peas. They've been boiled to mush and served in a bucket. The texture is somewhere between spackle and baby regret. The flavor is muted, unless the cook got creative with pickled cabbage juice, which adds a note of existential bitterness. On festive nights, by which I mean when the sea hasn't murdered anyone recently, they serve duff. Ship's duff is a boiled pudding of flour, suet, and despair. It's gray, dense, and occasionally moldy. You eat it anyway, because if you don't, someone else will, and then you'll still be hungry and resentful. Let's talk about the cook. He's not a chef. He's not trained. He's a former prisoner or failed co-opper who was near a fire once and now oversees the ship's kitchen, which is really just a hot box with a swinging pot. His name might be One-Eyed Tom or Greasy Hugh, and he hates you personally. He cooks everything in a large copper cauldron that's never been fully cleaned. Layers of meals past cling to the sides like ancient barnacles of flavor. If you stir too deep, you might awaken a stew from 1492. Everything is ladled with a slop spoon. There are no individual portions. It's a first-come, first-served, don't-make-eye-contact system. You line up, you get your scoop, you pray it has something solid in it. And water? Ah, the water. Fresh water is stored in barrels. These barrels have been slowly fermenting under the sun for months. The water inside is now the color of weak tea and tastes like wood, iron, and regret. You drink it anyway, because you must. You don't think about the floaty things. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you get small beer, a weak, yeasty brew safer than the water and only slightly more miserable. Or grog, the sailor's cocktail. Water mixed with rum and citrus juice, meant to prevent scurvy and complaints. It mostly causes singing. And speaking of singing, someone always starts a shanty mid-meal, not out of joy, but to keep from crying. The songs are slow, rhythmic, and full of longing for things like land, women, and bread that doesn't fight back. You join in, not because you know the words, but because it's safer than chewing in silence. Let's take a moment to address your digestion. It's not going well. You haven't had a vegetable in a week. Your bowels are a mystery. You're either desperately constipated or losing fluids in intervals that align suspiciously with whenever we hit a wave. The latrine, a hole at the back of the ship, is too terrifying to use during storms. Many sailors opt for the bucket. You have yet to discover the bucket's location. You suspect it moves. Now, maybe you're thinking, this doesn't sound that bad. And to that I say, remember the rats? They're back. For the pork, for the bread, for your dinner. They do not wait politely. They climb the table. They drag biscuits away like little sea bandits. You respect their ambition, but also you want to scream. On rare days, the crew catches a fish, a real, actual fish. It's cooked immediately, boiled, grilled over coals, or sometimes just chewed raw by impatient men who haven't seen protein that wasn't salted to oblivion in months. You get one bite, maybe two. It tastes like hope. You immediately mourn its loss. Even rarer, fruit. Lemons, limes, oranges, gifts from gods you don't believe in. They appear once every few months during port stops, passed around like sacred relics. You lick the peel, you inhale the scent, you try to remember what freshness feels like. It makes you cry, quietly, into your pork. And what happens when the food runs out? It's simple. You ration, you stretch, you pretend. You make soup out of seaweed and old pickles. You reboil bones. You scrape barrels. Some men eat leather. Others lick the salt off the rails. The cook starts serving mystery stew, which you suspect contains former pets. When starvation truly hits, the crew changes. Eyes hollow. Voices go quiet. No one jokes. No one sings. The rats become tempting. You discuss this. Seriously. You argue over which rat looks plumpest. You name one dinner. You make peace with your choices. And through all of this, you keep eating. Because you must. Because tomorrow you haul more rope. Because food, no matter how vile, is the only thing standing between you and being the next ingredient in someone else's stew. Bon appetit. By now, the salted pork has settled somewhere in your lower intestine, lodged between despair and confusion. The sun has begun its slow descent into the sea, bleeding orange across the splintered deckboards like a painter with too few colors and too many traumas. You lean against the railing, half digesting and half existing. And this, dear sailor, is the perfect moment to reflect. Not on your life. No, that would be too modern. Too self-aware. Instead, you reflect on omens. Signs. The cosmic breadcrumbs of meaning that you and your crewmates use to explain, well, literally everything. Welcome to the divine bureaucracy of the early 16th century. A world where God, the devil, angry mermaids, and your cabin boy's sneeze might all carry equal weight in determining your fate. Let's begin with the stars. You think they're beautiful. But to the ship's pilot, they're a cheat sheet, a mood ring, a navigational Bible written in sparkles and gilt. If the stars are clear, it means God is watching. If they're obscured, it means God is displeased, or napping, or perhaps punishing you for stealing that lemon from Juan 2 ports ago. You do not question this logic, because questioning things gets you blamed for storms. Take, for example, the story of Luis the Lucky. He once whistled during a gale, just a soft, tuneless hum. The next day, lightning hit at the mainmast, and 3 goats vanished. Nobody knows how the goats got aboard. But everyone remembers Luis. He now sails with a bell around his neck and speaks only in prayers. Whistling on a ship, by the way, is forbidden. It's said to summon winds, usually the wrong kind. The kind that flip sails or snap masts or push you gently but insistently toward hell. Also forbidden, women. Yes, the mere presence of a woman on a galleon is considered enough to invite Poseidon's wrath, Neptune's vengeance, or just really bad vibes. It's not that the crew hates women, they just believe women anger the ocean, and the ocean is moody enough already. You sigh, because you too are moody, and very, very tired. Still, no one asks how angry sea gods feel about hundreds of unwashed, drunk, swearing men relieving themselves off the poop deck. Somehow that's not an offense, just tradition. Then there's the birds. Seagulls? Good omen. Flying fish? Better. Albatross? Divine. But kill an albatross, you die. Not immediately, but soon. And weirdly, probably involving a rope, a loose plank, and a knife that slips at just the wrong angle. You remember the tale of a young cabin boy who shot a bird off a barrel. Just a wave of his hand. The next week, he went missing. People say he fell overboard. Others say the cook put him in the stew. Either way, you nod solemnly when gulls land on your bunk. They have rights now. Your ship, like most Spanish galleons, is steeped in Catholic ritual. Every morning begins with prayer, whether you're hungover or just bleeding from the shin. You kneel, you cross yourself, you mumble, you try not to fart. God is always listening, especially when you're trying to suppress bodily functions. There's also confession, but not the kind where you sit in a nice wooden booth and whisper through a screen. No, confession at sea is more casual. You simply find the chaplain, usually a crusty man with teeth like driftwood and a robe that smells like fish stew, and tell him your sins. You confess stealing, swearing, wishing the captain would get a splinter in his soul, and he forgives you. Usually, unless the waves are high. Then he just stares at you and mutters about Jonah and whales and God's cruel sense of humor. Speaking of Jonah, everyone believes someone on the ship is the Jonah, the cursed soul dragging divine punishment behind him like barnacles. If things go wrong too often, bad weather, spoiled rations, suspicious mold, the crew starts whispering. You eye each other over meals, over the barrels. At night, when the lanterns flicker, you wonder, is it me? And then you remember Luis and his whistle. You tighten your lips and pray harder. And superstitions, dear listener, are like barnacles themselves. They stick. You don't trim your fingernails on a Friday. You don't wear green near the hold. You always step aboard with your right foot first, or the rats will follow you in dreams. You carve saints into the mast with a dull knife, because sharp knives attract storms. And then there's the St. Elmo's fire, a glowing blue spark that sometimes flickers on the rigging during electrical storms. It looks beautiful, ethereal, holy. It also means someone is about to die. You try not to look at it. One sailor stares too long, and the next day he falls from the crow's nest, screaming about angels in the sails. You find his boot on the deck, just the boot. Everyone nods and eats their duff silently. You wonder about the chaplain. He's not a comforting man. He mutters in Latin and carries relics, bones of saints, locks of hair, sometimes an entire tooth wrapped in twine. He tells you sin is the true storm. and then hands you a crucifix carved from driftwood and covered in thumbprints. You wear it anyway. You're not proud, just nervous. Sometimes he blesses the pigs, not the crew, just the pigs. Because pigs are food, and food must be protected. You ask if he'll bless the salt pork. He laughs. You don't know why. And let's not forget witchcraft. Yes, it exists. Yes, people still believe in it. That strange dream you had? Witchcraft. That rash on your leg? Witchcraft. That time your hammock broke and you fell onto your bunkmate? Definitely witchcraft. There are charms to prevent it. Tiny bags of herbs, pieces of coral, a chicken bone tied with red thread. You keep one in your sock. It does nothing. But you feel safer. Sort of. In truth, this ship is less a floating fortress and more a drifting cathedral of anxiety, a congregation of half-mad men held together by prayer, rum, and lies. And the most terrifying part? It works. Because somehow, through belief and ritual and mutual fear, the ship stays afloat. The sails stay full. The captain stays alive. The rats keep singing. You don't know if it's the rosaries, the relics, or just dumb luck wrapped in dogma. But you don't question it. Not anymore. You cross yourself before bed. You thank St. Brendan for safe passage. You whisper a little poem about mermaids and moonlight and knots that don't slip. And you sleep. Because if you stop believing, even for a moment, you might start to notice that the ocean doesn't care who you are, or what you pray, or how many times you apologize to Luis. The ocean is watching, and it's hungry. Leisure, on a Spanish galleon, is a cruel joke. It's the carrot dangled just out of reach, the promised reprieve that never quite arrives. And when it does, it's misshapen, damp, and probably infested with weevils. Much like the carrot you had for dinner last week. But let's say, against all odds, you survive your duties for the day. You've tied enough knots to start questioning your relationship with rope. You've hoisted sails, polished brass that doesn't want to shine, hauled bilge buckets, and eaten enough salted matter to forget what texture is. Now, finally, the sun lowers. Shadows stretch long across the deck. The ocean simmers instead of roaring, and someone mutters that it's time for rest. But rest is a relative term, isn't it? Let's break down the entertainment options aboard your lovely plague-scented palace. 1. Gossip and petty feuds. The oldest and most reliable form of entertainment on a ship is talking about each other behind each other's backs, sometimes loudly, sometimes within stabbing range. "Did you hear?" whispers one sailor, chewing a hunk of hardtack. "The new guy slept through his prayers again. That's a scandal." Another sailor scoffs. "I saw him looking at the chaplain's wine, with intent." Even bigger scandal. You join in, because what else are you going to do? Stare at the horizon? You tried that. It blinked at you once, and now you're afraid of it. 2. Games, the Don't Die edition. Games aboard ship are rudimentary and often mildly dangerous. The most common is dice, carved from bone or stone, clattering onto overturned crates with a rhythm somewhere between boredom and doom. But cheating? Cheating is not advised. One man gets caught palming a die, and suddenly we've transitioned from fun to trial by seawater. He's lashed to the mast and left in the sun until he admits to being a pawn of the devil. He insists it was just luck. Everyone rolls their eyes. Another popular pastime is wrestling, which is not officially sanctioned, but happens whenever two men are bored and angry at the same time, which is hourly. No points, no rounds, just flailing limbs and insults like, "Your mother bathes with vinegar," "Your beard smells like lantern oil." Eventually someone breaks a rib. Entertainment ends. 3. Music. If you're desperate, do you enjoy sea shanties? You used to. Now they haunt you. The same 6 verses over and over, sung by men with no rhythm and fewer teeth. Someone always tries to harmonize. Someone else always thinks shouting is singing. The tunes are usually about rum, death, women you'll never meet, or storms you've definitely already survived. But you sing anyway. Because the alternative is silence, and silence lets the ship creak. And if the ship creaks, you remember you're in a floating coffin one storm away from oblivion. So you sing, and pray someone plays the hurdy-gurdy. Nobody ever does. 4. Punishments. A public spectacle. Now here's where it gets juicy. Justice on board is swift, brutal, and weirdly festive. It's the one event where everyone shows up, even the rats. Especially the rats. Offenses range from minor, stealing rations, skipping prayer, to major, mutiny, blasphemy, accidentally implying the captain's parrot is overweight. Punishments include The lash, self-explanatory. Whip back, screaming. The dunking, tied and lowered overboard, supposed to scare you but also tends to drown you. Oops. Keel hauling. You do not want to be keel hauled. It involves ropes, the underside of the ship, and barnacles that behave like cheese graters with anger issues. And yet, people show up. They lean against crates, chewing stale bread and nodding solemnly. He shouldn't have said that about the chaplain, someone mutters, as if that explains the entire situation. This, you realize, is theater. Medieval, salty, and entirely traumatizing theater. 5. Storytelling, lies, and camp horror. When things calm down and the bruises settle, someone inevitably lights a stub of candle and starts telling stories. The stories are always gross, inaccurate, deeply unsettling. You hear tales of sea serpents that whisper names in Latin, ghost ships filled with the dead who still try to collect wages, a sailor who grew gills after drinking too much spoiled ale. One man insists he saw the edge of the world once. He says the water just stops. Everyone stares. No one challenges him, because even if it's false, it's entertaining. And entertainment is rarer than fresh socks. You tell a story, too, about a woman made of moonlight who once appeared in the galley and offered you dried figs. It's not true, but it earns you a few nods. You feel powerful. You feel like a bard. Then someone farts. The magic dies. 6. Cleaning, just for fun. Sometimes, in the absence of actual fun, people clean things. Decks mostly. It's not assigned, they do it voluntarily. Why? Because polishing brass is less depressing than contemplating existence. You once watched a man sweep the same patch of deck for 3 hours. He claimed he was chasing a weevil. You never saw the weevil. You still wonder if it was real or metaphorical. You help him. It gives your hands something to do. You polish a cannon, not because it will be used, but because the act feels oddly holy, like you're trying to shine your way into sanity. It doesn't work, but it's something. So there you have it, your nightlife. No dancing, no cocktails, just bruises, dice, and softly whispered heresies. And yet there's a rhythm to it, a pattern, a bizarre, salt-rimmed ecosystem of rituals and reactions. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to. You curl up under your mildewed blanket, listening to a fellow sailor snore like a walrus being exercised. You smile, because despite everything, you survived another day. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get lucky tomorrow. Maybe someone brought cards. Maybe the sea will stay kind. Maybe the rats will leave your shoes alone. You close your eyes, and in the darkness you hear a creak, a sigh, a laugh that might be the wind or something older. But you don't open your eyes. Because you've learned the greatest game aboard a Spanish galleon is pretending you're somewhere else. If you've come aboard this 16th century Spanish galleon, hoping for a candlelit kiss beneath the sails or a steamy rendezvous behind a barrel of hardtack, I regret to inform you, you are catastrophically out of luck. Romance in this world is less a slow-burning flame and more a damp torch stub that's been dropped in a puddle of sweat, superstition, and patriarchy. It sputters, it smokes, and then it dies, usually somewhere off the coast of terrible expectations. Let's start with the obvious. There are no women on board, at least not officially. Women are considered bad luck at sea, a belief so deeply ingrained that even mentioning your mother can be met with suspicious side eyes and an impromptu exorcism. Some say it's because the sea is a jealous mistress, and bringing along another lady, even in conversation, will anger her. The logic is flimsy, the paranoia is not. But sailors are still human, which means they still long and pine, and occasionally make questionable choices involving ropes, mermaid carvings, or singing to sea foam like it's listening. You've probably heard of sea wives, not actual spouses, but whispered fantasies, half-memories, and splinters of loneliness sharpened into desire. Every sailor has one. A woman remembered from home. A girl who might have waved once from a dock. A tavern maid whose name was definitely not Portia. But that's what you call her now. You pretend she writes you letters. You pretend she's waiting. You pretend she knows your name. You know on some level that she does not. But hope is the most addictive form of madness. Now let's pivot to the actual relationships you might encounter aboard. Not romantic, not tender, not healthy, but present. Sailors form close bonds. Out of necessity, out of proximity, out of needing someone to whisper to when the sea howls and you're not sure if the mast is creaking or praying. Sometimes these relationships turn intimate, sometimes they're secret, Sometimes everyone knows, but no one says a word because it's cold, the voyage is long, and judgment is too exhausting. There is no privacy, but there's also no therapy. An affection, in any form, becomes currency, whether it's a shared blanket, a stolen plum, or a back rub that slowly becomes something else. Are there consequences? Absolutely. The church forbids it. The captain discourages it. The chaplain might perform a full-body blessing if he suspects anything beyond brotherly bonding. But punishment? Only if someone complains. Only if the gossip grows louder than the waves. Only if the relationship interrupts the delicate ecosystem of denial and repression that keeps the ship afloat. On shore, things are hardly better. Let's say, against all odds, you survive your voyage. You return to port. You are paid, in theory, and you stumble into a tavern smelling like brine and guilt. There you might encounter a woman, perhaps a barmaid, perhaps someone more negotiable, perhaps a recent widow who's been told falsely that sailors are good husbands. What follows is not romance, it's transaction. Dowries are discussed, virginity is debated, age is guessed, then ignored, teeth are counted, land is promised, babies are mentioned with a kind of vague, threatening inevitability. You do not write poetry. You write your name on a ledger and hope her father doesn't own a knife. Marriage, in this world, is not about love. It's about property, alliances, survival. It's two people agreeing, or being forced to agree, that sharing misery is more efficient than enduring it alone. You might get lucky. She might laugh at your jokes. She might not smell like sadness. You might build something approximating trust. But more often than not, the wife stays ashore, managing goats and bleeding into straw, and you go back to sea. Because it pays. Because it numbs. Because it's the only place you feel small enough to forget who you are. Still, sailors are a romantic breed. In theory, they write ballads, they scratch initials into wood, they carry locks of hair in lockets that definitely once held soup, they carve hearts into the railings with knives meant for peeling oranges. But these gestures are not for anyone else. They're for survival. Because loneliness is the real predator at sea. It gnaws slower than sharks and cuts deeper than coral. A sailor without someone to dream of becomes brittle, unmoored. He starts talking to shadows. He starts naming waves. So you pretend. You imagine a sweetheart back home, pressing her fingers to the window, whispering your name to the stars. You imagine she cries when it storms. You imagine she hasn't married the blacksmith. You know it's a lie. But it's a kind lie. And in this world, that's the best you can hope for. One final note about courtship in the age of sail. There's no such thing as a first date. There is, however, meeting her father while wearing your nicest boots and trying not to vomit from nerves and/or spoiled rum. There is bartering 3 chickens and a cow for permission to marry someone you've spoken to twice. There is waking up one day and being told she's your wife now, and also her name is Maria, and no, she doesn't like you. These are the rules. No bouquets, no candles, no slow dances, just muddy shoes, awkward silences, and the shared horror of being legally bound in a world with no deodorant and very little hope. You sigh. You pull your blanket up to your chin. You try not to think about the sea wives, about the women you've lost, about the women who never existed. And somewhere in the dark, you hear another sailor whisper a name, Portia. Of course, you close your eyes, because pretending to be loved is almost as good as being loved. And here, almost is everything. Let's talk about childhood aboard a Spanish galleon, or more precisely, the complete and utter absence of it. You might be tempted to picture something wholesome, a tousle-haired cabin boy giggling while scrubbing the deck with a mop half his size, a plucky orphan dreaming of becoming captain, maybe a wide-eyed youth clutching a wooden sword, earning the grudging respect of crusty old sea dogs with nothing but courage and bad teeth. No, absolutely not. That's Disney's version. This is the soggy truth. On a 16th century Spanish galleon, children are not children. They are laborers. They are leverage. They are liabilities. They are, most alarmingly, you. Because tonight, you wake up as one of them. You're 12, or maybe 11. Honestly, you don't know. No one does. Birthdays aren't celebrated here unless they coincide with a particularly vivid case of scurvy or a cannonball mishap. You're not sure how long you've been at sea. Weeks? Months? A vague soup of sunrises and salt-stained misery. The ocean has no clocks. Time stretches, it contracts, it leaks through the seams of your sanity like bilge water through a rotting hull. Your duties? Numerous, none optional. You're a ship's boy, an umbrella term that covers any task not dignified enough for an adult man, which is most of them. You swab the deck, you deliver orders, you carry buckets, you clean the chamber pots, yes, plural. You unclog the scuppers with your bare hands, you listen, silently, to men weep in their sleep. Occasionally you vomit from the smell. You do it quietly. At dawn you wake to shouting, or bells, or a boot. There's no alarm, there's no breakfast tray. There's just noise and motion, and someone already blaming you for something you definitely didn't do, but also maybe did. Your sleeping area is a crawl space below the main deck, where the air is thick enough to chew and every plank above your head sounds like it's about to cave in and kill you. You share your bedroll with fleas, your thoughts with ghosts, and your oxygen with the collective foot stink of 40 grown men who haven't bathed since they left Cadiz. It's intimate. Children at sea are rarely alone. There's always another boy, younger or smaller, to share chores with. You might even become friends, though that word is generous. It's more like trauma colleagues. The older boys bully the younger ones. The men bully everyone. The captain barely acknowledges your existence unless you spill something on his maps, at which point you are reminded, with stunning creativity, that your life is both meaningless and profoundly inconvenient. Punishments? Of course. Mop too slow? Slap. Slack on rope coiling? Smack. Drop the captain's cup? A beating and 3 days without food. One boy once sneezed on the priest's robe during Mass and was made to sit in the crow's nest during a storm. He came down talking to invisible birds and never blinked again. You try not to sneeze. Now let's talk about education. You receive none. You cannot read. You cannot write. You have no books. The only letters you know are the ones tattooed on sailors' knuckles or carved into barrels. But you are learning in a way. You've memorized every knot. You know which sails to trim when the wind turns spiteful. You can balance a chamber pot while the ship pitches 20 degrees starboard. You understand viscerally the subtle difference between a man groaning in hunger and one groaning in death. No tests, no quizzes, just survival. Once in a while, the chaplain decides to educate you. Not academically, of course, but spiritually. He reads scripture aloud, slowly in Latin, which you don't understand, but which sounds appropriately ominous. You kneel, you nod, you pretend to be moved, because the alternative is confession. And that means admitting sins you don't understand, followed by vague threats about fire, eternal darkness, and your soul being weighed like ballast. You once asked what ballast was. You were assigned to clean the bilge for 2 days with a spoon. Childhood diseases? They're the same as adult diseases, just faster and less survivable. Scurvy? You get it younger. Dysentery? It hits harder. Rat bites? More infected. Broken limbs? Less likely to heal correctly. Head wounds? Well, if you're lucky, they only affect your balance. If you're unlucky, they make you start singing sea shanties in your sleep until someone tapes your mouth shut with pitch. You learn to stay out of the way. You learn not to cry. Crying gets you noticed, and being noticed is never good. There are no lullabies. No toys. No kids' corner. Your entertainment is the occasional fish fight. Yes, this is a thing. Watching rats eat each other, or playing guess whose tooth fell out based on groaning volume. It is as charming as it sounds, and yet somehow you persist. Why? Because no one expects you to. You are small, disposable, but still alive, which is a kind of rebellion. You start humming songs in the dark, tunes your mother used to hum, maybe, or ones you've made up entirely. You whisper your jokes to other boys under your breath. You find joy in ridiculous things, like a pebble that looks like a bean or a seagull that hates the first mate. Children adapt, even here, especially here. You don't dream of escape, that's too dangerous. But you imagine calmer seas, softer voices, a world where adults don't spit when they talk and where your hands don't hurt all the time. You hold that image close. It keeps you from becoming them. One boy, maybe 14, carves little ships into the wood with a nail. When asked why, he says he wants to remember what this one looked like. You ask, why would you want to remember this hell? He shrugs, because one day I'll build a better one. And for a second, just a second, you believe him. On land, the line between pet and pest is usually crisp. Dogs wear collars, cats get names, mice get traps. You know what belongs and what's been invited only by accident. But on a Spanish galleon? Ah, no. That line is not so much blurred as it is obliterated, drowned in bilge water, gnawed through by rats, and resewn using horsehair and existential dread. Because tonight, dear traveler of the sleepless hours, you get to experience the delight of living among creatures who don't care if you're the master of the ship or just another source of body heat. Let's begin, shall we? You wake up, if you ever truly slept, and something is tickling your cheek. You swat at it, it scurries off, you do not look, you never look. Looking invites knowledge, and knowledge aboard a ship like this is almost always regret-shaped. But let's assume, in a moment of curiosity or foolhardy bravery, you lift your head and peer into the darkness. You're greeted by the beady glint of several tiny eyes. They blink. Not in fear, in judgment. Congratulations. You've just met your roommates, the ship rats. Now, rats aboard a galleon are not passive stowaways. They are citizens, possibly even stakeholders. Some of them have been here longer than the crew. They know the ship's layout better than the captain. They have family dynasties stretching back multiple hulls and harbor infestations. They also have names, not ones you've given them. No, they name each other. You are simply warm pillow that screams. They travel in squads. They attend your meals. They host tiny fights in the grain sacks. One of them once tried to smoke a discarded cigar butt and nearly set the powder room on fire. He is now their king. You might assume the rats are the worst of it. How sweet, how naive. Let's talk lice. Your scalp is not your own. It belongs to a thriving colony of bloodthirsty squatters who see your hair as beachfront property with excellent access to warm crevices and despair. No amount of scratching helps. You could flay your head down to the bone and they'd still hold a dinner party on your clavicle. The only way to keep lice at bay? Shave everything. Constantly. With a dull blade. While the ship rocks. While a man next to you is throwing up fish bones and remorse. Even then, they come back. They always come back. And then there are fleas. Tiny jumping droplets of plague. They infest everything. Your bedroll, your clothes, your boots, your soul. You develop a sort of resigned twitch, the reflexive flick of an ankle or a slap to the back of your thigh. It's not effective. It's not even satisfying. But it makes you feel like you're still marginally in charge of your epidermis. You're not. Occasionally, the ship carries a cat. Technically for rat control, but let's be honest, this cat is a freelancer. She does what she wants. Her name, if she has one, is unprintable. She has survived storms that claimed masts. She has walked across the captain's maps during strategy meetings and been petted reverently, like a fuzzy deity. She is the only creature on board with true power. Everyone respects her. No one crosses her. She bites only the deserving. You once gave her a bit of dried fish. She has since stared at you without blinking for 3 days straight. Dogs? Occasionally, but rarely. You might see 1 or 2 mutts pacing the upper deck, their ears flattened by wind and regret. They're not pets. They're cargo guardians, sometimes morale boosters, sometimes snacks. Yes, let's talk about that. On especially long voyages, when supplies run low and fishing yields nothing but driftwood and seaweed, the line between companion and cuisine becomes alarmingly thin. You do not get attached, you do not name the dogs, you do not ask what's in the stew. You eat, you sleep, you weep, you pet the remaining dog gently, knowing it may soon betray your affections with a bark and then a boil. But not all animal encounters are so personal. Let's discuss the weevils. Weevils live in your bread, your biscuits, your flour, your dreams. They are crunchy, they are chewy, they are inevitable. There is no food without them. At some point, the crew just stops pretending to care. They nickname them. They pretend they're spices. They crunch merrily and tell each other that it adds texture. You chew. Slowly. Because fast chewing might mean you discover something moving, and then you have to pretend you didn't. Outside the hull, there's life too. Seabirds. Dozens of them. Beautiful in the distance. Demonic up close. They scream. They drop things. They steal shiny objects. One once flew off with a sailor's wig and was later seen mocking him from the rigging with his own hair. But they're considered good luck somehow, which is suspicious because everything on this ship that's good luck usually also has a beak, a rash, or the ability to induce hallucinations. And then there are the fish. Not the kind you catch, the kind that catch you. Fall overboard and you will be swiftly reacquainted with the food chain. Sharks, sometimes, but also smaller horrors. Barbed fish with poisonous spines, glowing jelly that burns, suction-lipped creatures that latch onto your ankles like hungry curses. Every sailor knows someone who fell in and didn't come back up the same or at all. The sea is not your friend. The sea is not even your frenemy. The sea is a vast, moody banquet hall, and you are the garnish. But through all this, the strangest thing happens. You begin to form attachments. Not to people, they're awful. To the vermin, to the cat who tolerates you. To the rat who sleeps near your head and keeps the others away. To the lice who you swear are developing personalities. One day you start naming them. It feels unhinged. It is unhinged. But it helps. One flea you call Francisco. He never bites on Sundays. A gentleman. Eventually the crew notices. Talking to your pets again? Someone sneers. You nod solemnly. They're better company than you. Laughter, maybe a slap, maybe not. But in that moment, the rat, the flea, and the cat are on your side. It's a kind of alliance. A crew within a crew. A whisper of solidarity in a world that otherwise chews up anything soft or sentimental. So yes, the line between pest and pet is gone. But in its place, something truer. A reminder that companionship doesn't need to be clean or noble or even particularly mutual. Sometimes it's just shared warmth in a place where everything else is cold. And in a life this miserable, that counts. The sea has no loyalty, and neither does the sky. If you thought a Spanish galleon was merely a creaking fortress of wood and rope, beholden only to the fickle politics of empire and the groaning bellies of sailors, you were wrong. It is also entirely at the mercy of the weather. And the weather, like everything else on this voyage, is out to get you. Tonight, you wake to a sound you've learned to fear more than cannon fire. Wind. Not the gentle sort that flutters curtains or rustles leaves. Those belong to land dwellers and poets. This is a howling, snarling, uninvited guest clawing at your rigging and slapping the sails like they owe it money. Your hammock swings like a pendulum on trial for heresy. You're seasick before you even open your eyes. By now, you've learned the 4 stages of maritime weather. Scorching despair, damp hopelessness, soggy death wish, biblical apocalypse. There is no in-between. There are no mild spring days. There's only sun that wants to boil your brain and rain that wants to dissolve your bones. And wind. Always the wind. Let's start with heat. Tropical calm is a myth. When the sun bears down on a Spanish galleon, it's like being slow roasted inside a cedar coffin. The deck becomes a frying pan. The hold becomes a sauna designed by Satan. Tar melts, ropes smoke, men hallucinate conversations with barrels of salted pork. You sweat so much your clothes never dry, only transition into a state of permanent dampness. Your skin becomes a salty, rawhide wrapper, your scalp a battlefield of blisters and lice. There is no sunscreen, only wide-brimmed hats and regret. Then there's rain. When it rains at sea, it doesn't merely fall, it attacks. It comes sideways, upwards, downwards, all at once, turning the deck into a slippery mosh pit of shouting and swearing. Rain doesn't cool you, it mocks you. It soaks into your bones and dares you to dry off. Below deck, it seeps in anyway. Nothing is watertight. Not the hull, not your bedroll, not your hope. Your clothes never dry. Your bedding smells like an old sponge that lost its will to clean. Mold colonizes your boots. Mildew wins awards for coverage. Storms? You don't survive storms. You endure them. You cling to things. You shout prayers into the black void above and wonder if God outsourced weather to a particularly angry demon. Lightning flashes like divine paparazzi. Thunder arrives not as sound but as punishment. The mast creaks like it's composing its final will and testament. Buckets fly. Barrels roll. Men cry. So do you, but into your own shirt so no one sees. One sailor once claimed he saw the Virgin Mary hovering above the waves during a particularly nasty squall. Others saw the devil. Everyone saw their lunch again. You learn to fear the word tempest, because it doesn't just mean wind and rain. It means the possibility of everything breaking at once. Your ropes, your sails, your morale. The ship groans, the sea screams, and the sky, oh the sky, just watches. Impassively, indifferently. You imagine it laughing. Then comes cold. Not always, but sometimes, especially on northern routes. Cold so sharp it feels sentient. It bites your fingers. It gnaws your toes. It burrows into your ears and whispers cruel things. Your breath fogs. Your teeth chatter. Your nose runs and freezes in place. Ice forms on the rigging. Your clothes, still damp from the last storm, now become icy armor. And not the good kind. The rust-inducing, joint-stiffening, scream-when-you-sit kind. Fire, there's no fireplace on a galleon. You warm yourself by moving, and when you can't move, you shiver in rhythm with the hull. Wind. Always wind. Even when calm, it's there, humming like a grudge. When it rises, it becomes an entity, a roaring, invisible bear mauling the sails. It rips your hat off, your dignity with it. It hurls sea spray in your eyes, your ears, down your shirt. Wind determines your direction, your speed, your mood. It turns the ocean into a moody roller coaster designed by someone who hates you personally. And when there's no wind at all, that's its own kind of horror, the doldrums. Weeks of stifling stillness, no movement, no breeze, just heat, silence, and the rising suspicion that the world has ended and forgot to tell you. Men go mad in the doldrums. They play cards with ghosts, they whisper to barnacles, they accuse each other of stealing non-existent wind. You learn to fear both chaos and calm. Either way, the sky is plotting something. But sometimes, the clouds part, the wind behaves, the sea glitters like polished obsidian, and for one brief, shining moment, you feel peace. You know it's a trap. That's how the sky works out here. It gives you one soft breeze, one golden sunset, one gull riding the wind like poetry, and just as you exhale, it drops a squall on your head like a bucket of cosmic spite. So, you don't trust it. You never trust it. Because the weather doesn't want you to survive. It wants you to marinate. And here on this wooden tomb adrift on a wet, vengeful planet, it's winning. You knew this was coming. You've vomited over both rails. You've swabbed every imaginable stain from every cursed corner of this ship. You've watched your rations melt into a stew of mildew and beetle legs. But now, as the sun drops behind a bruised horizon and the deck creaks like a coffin lid closing, you realize something profound. Death is not an event out here. It is a background character. It's the extra in every scene. The one who doesn't speak, doesn't blink, but is always looming in the shot, waiting for his turn. It starts small, a cough that won't go away, a strange spot on someone's leg. A man who suddenly forgets his own name, or worse, remembers everything all at once and won't stop screaming. There's no doctor on board. There's the barber surgeon, who is hilariously the same man who cuts hair, pulls teeth, and bleeds you with a knife dipped in vinegar and prayers. You've seen his kit: a rusty saw, a hook, a jar of leeches, and a spoon. For reasons. If you feel sick, you hide it. You pretend your fever is sunstroke, that your swelling gums are just weather teeth. Because if you're seen as ill, you're either thrown to the lower hold to die in darkness, or worse, made a public lesson, bled, burned, purged, or puritanically exorcised. Once they cut open a man to see why he was bloated. The answer was everything. They gave him a sea burial. And by burial, we mean tossed him into the water with a cannonball tied to his ankles. You don't want to die at sea. No one does. It's not romantic. It's not noble. You don't get a quiet deathbed or a priest with clean hands. You get the priest who's seasick half the time and reuses the same holy water on everyone. You get whispered prayers over your convulsing body while the crew debates if you're faking it to avoid duty. Spoiler, you're not. Some illnesses are quick, most are not. Scurvy, for example, is a slow unraveling. First your gums swell, then your teeth loosen, your joints ache. You bleed from places that should not bleed. You start to smell like spoiled beef. One day, someone touches your arm and your skin just opens. They try to cure it with salt pork and superstition. Sometimes a rat bite festers. Sometimes a cut from a rope leads to fever. One man went mad from sun exposure and tried to fight the mast. The mast won. Death is not punctual. It arrives in stutters, in smells, in silences, in the way no one wants to sit near you anymore. When someone dies, the ship barely notices. There's no bell, no pause, just a quick prayer, a canvas wrap, and a splash. The sea takes back what the sky forgot. Sometimes you think you hear the dead knocking on the hull from below. You chalk it up to dreams, or madness, or both. You try not to think about the fact that if the ship sinks, no one will come for you. No rescue, no headlines. Just another wooden carcass swallowed by the sea. Just more bones for the whales to puzzle over. As night falls, you lie in your hammock, assuming it hasn't been stolen, and you listen to the breathing of the others. Some snore, some whisper. One man mutters the same prayer, over and over, like he's trying to convince himself that God is still listening. You find comfort in that. Not the prayer, the repetition. Because repetition is survival here. If your tasks don't kill you, the routine might keep you alive, or at least sane. You close your eyes and drift, not into sleep, but into that middle ground sailors know too well, where the creak of the timbers becomes a lullaby, where dream less about hope and more about remembering you're still human. You might wake up tomorrow. You might not. Either way, the ship sails on, and so does suffering. But for now, there's quiet. Not peace, but quiet. And after a day like this, that's the closest thing to heaven you'll get. Good night.